My baby was in the car.
Brenda stumbled through the automatic doors of the ER. Her face was bruised, clothes torn. Panic swelled in her eyes, a terrifying symphony playing out on a stage of fear. The words tumbled out, disjointed and frantic. They painted a scene of chaos, a mother's worst nightmare. The nurse, a seasoned professional, tried to calm her, but Brenda could only focus on the image seared into her mind, her little Cody, strapped in his car seat, disappearing into the night. Counsel, a man hardened by years on the force, felt a familiar weight settle in his gut. The kind of weight that only comes with the knowledge of another child gone missing, another family torn apart. He had seen it too many times before, and each time it chipped away a little more at his resolve. But he couldn't let that show. Not now. Not when someone needed him the most. He knew the statistics, the grim reality of missing children. The numbers were always against them, and the clock was always ticking. Every second that passed made it less likely they would find the child alive. But Counsel had learned to push those thoughts aside, to focus on the task at hand. He had to believe that this time would be different. But something in Brenda's eyes, a desperate hope clinging to the edges of her fear, sparked a flicker of determination in him. He would find Cody. He had to. Brenda's plea was not just another case file, it was a mother's cry for help, and that made all the difference. He couldn't let her down. He wouldn't.
Can you tell me what happened, Brenda? Take your time. Every detail, no matter how small, could be crucial. Don't rush. Just start from the beginning.
He questioned Brenda gently, his voice calm and reassuring. He knew that the last thing she needed was to feel pressured. She was already on the edge, and he needed her to stay focused, piecing together the fragmented narrative of her ordeal. Each word she spoke was a piece of the puzzle, and he had to fit them together to see the bigger picture. She had been on her way home, Cody asleep in the back seat. The day had been uneventful until that moment. She had no reason to suspect that anything was amiss. When two men forced her from the car, it happened so fast, she barely had time to react. One moment she was driving, the next she was on the ground, watching as her car sped away with her child still inside. The memory was a blur, a kaleidoscope of fear and adrenaline. She could barely remember their faces, just the feeling of helplessness as she screamed for help. Counsel listened patiently, his gaze steady, absorbing every detail. He knew that the smallest clue could make the biggest difference, trying to separate truth from trauma. It was a delicate balance, understanding that her fear could distort her memory, but also knowing that her emotions could lead to the truth. The case, straightforward at first glance, began to twist under scrutiny. What seemed like a simple carjacking was starting to look like something more sinister. Brenda's story, riddled with inconsistencies, raised red flags. She was confused, understandably so, but there were gaps that didn't add up. The location, a deserted stretch near the projects, was a known haven for car thieves, a place where people disappeared without a trace. But children were rarely involved. This was different. This was personal. And that made it all the more dangerous. Counsel, a seasoned detective, knew better than to ignore the prickling unease at the back of his mind. His instincts had saved him more times than he could count, and they were screaming at him now. Something was off, and he needed to find out what it was before it was too late. He decided to review the surveillance footage from the area. Maybe there was something there that could give them a lead. He knew it was a long shot, but he had to try. Working with the tech team, they combed through hours of footage, looking for anything out of the ordinary. It was tedious work, but Counsel was nothing if not thorough. And then there it was, a black SUV circling the block just minutes before the abduction. It was a small detail, but it was something, a lead. He made the call, alerting the team to the new development. They needed to find that SUV. It was their best chance at finding Cody. The search was on. Every available unit was on the lookout, and the city was on high alert. They had to move fast. Time was running out. Counsel knew that this was just the beginning. The real work was still ahead of them. But for the first time since the case began, he felt a glimmer of hope. They had a lead, and that was more than they had an hour ago. He was ready to do whatever it took to bring Cody home. Because in the end, that's what it was all about. Not the statistics, not the odds, but the hope of a mother and the life of a child. The projects, a sprawling concrete jungle, hummed with a nervous energy as Counsel and his team descended. The search for Cody had become a manhunt, a desperate race against time. The community, a tinderbox of poverty and frustration, watched the police with a mixture of wary hope and smoldering resentment. Rumors spread like wildfire. Whispers of a child seen near the river, a car matching Brenda's description abandoned in a nearby town. Each lead ended in a dead end, each passing hour ratcheting up the tension. Counsel felt the pressure mounting, the weight of their expectations a tangible burden on his shoulders. He couldn't let them down, not this time. As days bled into nights, the investigation hit a wall. Cody was gone, vanished without a trace. The media, sensing a story, descended on the projects, their cameras hungry for images of despair. Brenda, once a sympathetic figure, became the subject of scrutiny. Her story, dissected and analyzed, began to unravel under the harsh glare of public opinion. The whispers started subtly, doubts sown in the fertile ground of fear and speculation. Brenda's past, a history marred by poverty and bad choices, was dredged up and laid bare. Fingers pointed, accusations flew. Counsel, torn between his duty and his gut feeling, found himself questioning everything he thought he knew. The tension, simmering for days, finally boiled over. The city had been on edge, whispers of crime and danger spreading like wildfire. People walked the streets with a sense of unease, their eyes darting around, searching for unseen threats. A young man, a known gang member from the projects, was picked up for questioning. His reputation preceded him, and the police were eager to close the case quickly. The community, desperate for a sense of safety, watched with bated breath. His alibi was shaky, his demeanor defiant. He sat in the cold, sterile room, the harsh light casting shadows on his face. The officers, seasoned and stern, pressed him for answers, their voices a relentless barrage. Under the relentless pressure of the interrogation, he cracked, offering up a fabricated confession. The words tumbled out, a mix of truth and lies, as he sought to end the torment. The officers, eager for a resolution, took his confession at face value. Relief washed over the city, a wave of misguided satisfaction. Headlines blared the news, and for a moment, the city breathed easier. But counsel wasn't convinced. They had seen too many rushed judgments, too many innocent lives ruined. The young man's story felt staged, rehearsed. The council members, seasoned and wise, sensed something was amiss. They pored over the details, their minds racing to piece together the truth. The details were wrong, the timeline didn't add up. The more they examined, the more inconsistencies they found. It was like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Counsel knew, with a certainty that gnawed at his insides, that they had the wrong guy. The weight of their responsibility pressed down on them, a heavy burden they couldn't ignore. But the city, desperate for closure, clung to the confession like a life raft. They needed to believe that the danger had passed, that they could return to their lives without fear. The young man, a scapegoat for their collective fear, was charged with Cody's kidnapping. The courtroom was filled with somber faces, the weight of the decision hanging heavy in the air. As the gavel fell, a sense of finality settled over the room, but the council knew the real story was far from over. Amidst the chaos, a beacon of hope emerged. In a city often overshadowed by its own struggles, a glimmer of light began to shine through the darkness. This light was not just a metaphorical one, but a real, tangible force of change. Karen Colucci, a woman known for her tireless community work, took charge. She was a familiar face in the neighborhood, always seen at the forefront of community initiatives. Her dedication was unwavering and her spirit unbreakable. She organized search parties, rallied volunteers, and kept Brenda's spirits afloat. Karen's leadership was not just about giving orders, it was about inspiring hope and resilience in everyone around her. She knew that every pair of hands, every set of eyes could make a difference.
Having lost a child myself years ago, I understand the depths of Brenda's despair. The pain of such a loss is indescribable, a wound that never fully heals. But in that shared sorrow, there is also a profound connection, a bond that transcends words.
She became Brenda's rock, a steady presence in the storm. Karen's support was more than just physical, it was emotional and spiritual. She offered a shoulder to cry on, a hand to hold, and a heart that understood the unspoken fears and hopes. The volunteer group, a motley crew of mothers, grandmothers, and concerned citizens, combed through the city. They were a diverse group, united by a common goal. Each person brought their own unique strengths and perspectives, making the search efforts more comprehensive and effective. They plastered missing posters on every surface, knocked on doors, and prayed for a miracle. The city became a canvas of hope, with every poster a reminder that someone was missing and that someone else cared enough to look for them.
We can't give up hope. I see through Brenda's facade, recognizing the fear and guilt that lurk beneath the surface. It's a heavy burden to bear, but together, we can lighten the load. We can share the pain and the hope, and in doing so, find the strength to keep going. I know she's hiding something, a truth too terrible to face. But in time, with support and love, she will find the courage to confront it. Until then, we stand by her, unwavering and steadfast.
Karen, her heart heavy with a familiar ache, refused to give up hope. She knew that the journey was far from over, but she also knew that with every step, they were getting closer. Closer to answers, closer to healing, and closer to bringing Brenda's child back home. The road ahead was long and fraught with challenges, but with Karen leading the way, there was a renewed sense of purpose and determination. The community, once fragmented, was now united in their quest, and in that unity they found strength. Karen's unwavering hope became a beacon for all, guiding them through the darkest of times.